Hi, I'm Deanna Schneider. Pronouns even on the monitors. Very strange room setup. I'm the IT director for the Division of Extension.
Hi everybody, I'm Keith Bogaszewski. I am the School of Education CIO and Director of Affairs.
And we have some assistance from Craig Cook and Brianna Kuhn from our program team who are going to be helping us with some note taking and gathering info if we have it.
Slide.
So for today, we're gonna, it's the nice thing about monitors, I can look anywhere and see what slide I'm on. So we're gonna give you a little overview about the IT Federation program, and then we're gonna dive into some of that discussion. So I'm gonna try to go pretty quickly through. We have a lot more information on our website. We have newsletters. So if you're curious to hear more than what I shared today, there is much more out there, and I'm happy to talk to folks afterwards as well. So IT Federation, if you haven't kind of come across it, why are we doing it? Why now? As we heard glimpses of earlier today, things like AI, cybersecurity, our landscape is changing. Higher education is under pressure. We have things that I think we are all very well aware of that are shifting in our landscape, in our pressures, in our opportunities. And so part of what IT Federation is the conversation of how can we come together as a technology community and address those? How do we avoid the risk of standing still and not finding ways to collaborate to meet our future together? And that's the very, very short version of that. There's a lot more I could get into. But again, this is just the prelude to the discussion.
Slide.
A federated operating model is one where we have a blend of service delivery types. So we have enterprise scale services, we have local scale services, we may have a range of things in between. It means coordinated, collaborative service delivery. It's figuring out how the piece puzzle fit together. That's something we do in some places today. That's something where we need to talk about where we need to do more of that. That's part of what this program is about.
Slide.
A couple things I like to cover. This is kind of a recent addition is some common misconceptions. This is where I guess my vision isn't as great as I could proclaim with my glasses. So making sure I can read each one along the way. First misconception we like to cover, this is not just a Do-It effort. This is not the Do-It Federation program. This is the university-wide effort. It's under the umbrella of the university strategic priorities. And it's sponsored through the Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration and the Provost's office. They are executive sponsors for this program. So this is something we are taking that university-wide lens of the work we're doing. This is not something where we have like a hidden secret plan. This isn't an elaborate scheme to roll out something that has already been decided and we're just trying to bring everyone along. This is something where we are crafting our path forward together. We are building that strategy across the technology community. Kind of a related one, this is not primarily a cost-cutting effort. Yes, financial stewardship is an important thing we need to consider. With the cuts to federal research funding, for example, there are things that are creating pressures, but that is not the only driver of this. There are also things we need to think about with compliance, with security, with risk reduction, with opportunities to leverage new technology, and so much more. So this is not a one driver program, and I know that it's a common fear that that's what this is about. The other is that federalization is not centralization. So often that's something people kind of understandably jump to the conclusion that this means everything is about centralizing, it's about consolidating. This is not, a federated model means that there are different types of services that are coordinated together. Kind of similarly, enterprise services does not mean Do-It services. Yes, Do-It provides many, if not most of the enterprise services today. But in our current state, there are many service providers that provide enterprise scale services and they are not run out of Do-It. And we need to reflect that reality in the work we're doing. A big one, and actually we heard a few of these kind of coming in this morning, a number of schools and colleges have different kind of restructuring efforts going on. So an understandable question is, are these related? And I cannot answer FAQs about those efforts. Those are driven by those schools and colleges. But obviously those are going to shape what our federated operating model looks like and what our IT community looks like. So they're not driven by this program. They're not our efforts. Many of them predate IT Federation. And then the last one I like to really hit home is please don't stop innovating or services or anything like that on account of IT Federation. We often hear people say, well, I thought I was going to make a service improvement, But I'm gonna hold off because, you know, IT Federation didn't pick that as one of their 5 in phase. Or I'm gonna wait and see what happens with IT Federation. That is not the intent here. This should not stymie innovation. It should not stymie solving local problems that need to be solved. Those things should move forward. We'd love to hear about them so we can keep apprised of how we can stay coordinated. But this should not be the be all end all of how we deliver our services. It can't be.
Slide.
So with that, kind of bringing it back around, our call to vision for this program is inclusive of our entire technology community. How might we improve services, improve stewardship of our limited resources, and strengthen things like security and compliance altogether. And we are really leaning into the university's principles of things like sifting and winnow part of this to make sure this is an inclusive process.
Slide.
So we just wrapped up phase 1. This is part of kind of our phase 2 planning, is getting out and talking to folks and helping shape what we think about for the next phase, which is currently slated to start along the lines of the fiscal year in July. And then we'll build future phases from there. So tentatively thinking of a fiscal year.
Slide. Phase 1 overview.
In phase 1, we had 2 working groups. We had the Enterprise Services Working Group, which was charged with selecting 3 to 5 services or service improvements, and the Benchmarking Work Group, which looked at things like total spend across hardware, software, salary, infrastructure, and they did some select benchmarking work as well.
Slide.
So I'm going to hand it to Pete to give a bit of an overview of the Enterprise Services Work Group.
Thank you. So Deanna and I were fortunate enough to be 2 of 5 representatives for divisional groups on campus, so non-Do-It folks. And then there were 5 Do-It directors that were also part of that Enterprise Services Work Group. We were tasked with taking ideas. So there were 78 unique ideas that were gathered through an IT Federation survey that went across campus. We were tasked with taking those ideas, all of them had merit, and getting them down to 3 to 5 unique recommendations that we'd be giving to the program sponsors. So it was really an iterative process. I can say the things that I really took away from it was a lot of the things that Jamie mentioned were showing up in the work that we did. It was truly collaborative between, you know, the central, the Do-It group, and then the divisional leaders that were a part of that process. We were always trying to think about not only the criteria that were given to us from the PCFA and provost, but also that responsibility of representing campus, right? We were representing 6 different groups directly, but we also knew that it was important to represent campus to the best of our ability. The process, we were under a very tight timeline, or at least it felt like a very tight timeline, getting that many services down to the recommendations that were required. But the team just worked really well together. From day one, there was trust. There were good conversations, hard conversations, you know, no yelling or kicking and screaming, but it really was like asking really good questions of each other and making sure that we were doing the best job that we could. If you do have any other questions on that, I think anybody from that Enterprise Services Work Group would be happy to answer them, whether in the Q&A or to reach out to us. But in the interest of time, we're going to move forward.
Slide. Data analysis approach.
So brief overview of our second working group, the Benchmarking Work Group. This group took a thoughtful approach to looking at data across the university. They used existing data sources. That was an intentional choice of this effort. And they took a lot of care in documenting the limitations and constraints that came along with that, and building out some methodology for how to talk about that data, how to analyze it, how to break it down. We have one of our work group members here who I won't put on the spot, but thank you for your help with that effort, Matt. And you put in some extra time on how do we break things down and categorize them in particular. And so this group did some analysis. The data is out there on our website, so I won't deep dive into it here. Happy to answer questions, but they looked at those different facets of data and the benchmarking, and then they pulled them all together into some reports that they put forward. And there was some recommendations out of there to look at some follow-up things around software in particular. So there weren't any kind of egregious issues found in the software purchasing, but there were things that were noted that wouldn't have shown up in the analysis. And so that was one of the key recommendations out of this group, was to do some follow-up look at that theme.
Slide.
So with that, we are, as I mentioned, in kind of a planning phase for phase 2. Phase 2 is where we're going to launch all the things that we proposed out of phase 1. We had those 5 proposed price services work group. We had recommendations from the benchmarking work group. Those are going to go forward in phase 2. So we're currently planning out how we're going to tackle those and the details of that work. And through those efforts, and also kind of broadly, this is the phase where we're going to start to see things like, how do we look at the topics of how we bring transparency and coordination and shared decision-making into our services and into our practices. How do we get a shared terminology and glossary of how we talk about things and how we're describing our technology operating model. So this is where a lot of the hefty stuff starts to take shape, and where we've laid the foundation in phase 1 to be able to dive into those. So I think hopefully this also underscores some of there's no preconceived plan, because when people are like, well, what does a federated operating model look like on a day-to-day basis? Phase 2 is where we define a lot of that, and we're doing that with opportunities for folks like yourselves to be a part of providing inputs and being a part of that discussion. So today is a part of that process to get thoughts that help us build and shape that.
Slide.
So with that, I can take some, kind of questions. Like I said, we want to lean into conversation. So there might be a few things where I might say, come chat with me after, or, go check out the website, but happy to answer questions, clarifications, especially anything that helps you feel like you can engage in a discussion.
We could do maybe 1 or 2, but we won't get to discussion.
They need to ask the question into the microphone though.
Yes.
I have the microphone.
Okay.
Yep, Jason's got a mic there, so does anyone have a?
Dan, if you have a question, I'll run the microphone over to you.
No, over there.
To get a sense of scale, how long a period do you think it's going to be before we see IT Federation as a thing?
I would say it might depend kind of what you mean by that, but if I'm taking my own interpretation of it, I think this phase 2 is where you'll start to see a lot of those tangible things come into play. What I don't have an exact date on is like, okay, we're going to define things on this date and then we're going to roll them out on this date. That's all still in this next month or 2, part of what we're mapping out what those things are. But the goal would be that we start to make that kind of meaningfully tangible progress on things like that during this phase 2, which is spans the fiscal year, is how we've laid it out. But I won't promise that it's like everything you could ever craft for a federated operating model, because this is a long haul for all of us. Like, there is no world where anyone could say, here's our operating model, we've solved it all in 6 months, and we're never going to have to talk about it ever again. This is going to be an ongoing conversation we have. So part of what we're also doing is building that infrastructure so we can continue to have those discussions and continue to shape the operating model over time together. So we're trying to be iterative and not assume we're going to get everything solved instantly the first try.
We've got a question.
Online, yeah.
We've got a question online. What is the distinction? Okay.
Just don't hold it down, just press.
Okay, I'm challenged here, sorry.
Yeah.
Hello? Nope.
Here.
Just use that one quick.
Yes, I broke it. Me and technology. All right. What is the distinction between endorsement versus discovery and recommendation for the enterprise services workgroup proposals? Basically, what does each subcategory mean?
Yeah, I can take that quick and then if you have thoughts to add. So there was an endorsement of the existing data center effort as part of it. So that was really saying there was in-flight work, and the work group said we endorse that work, but there wasn't like new proposal work to be done. That was part of what was in flight. There were 2 discovery efforts proposed, and so those will have an element of fact finding and work groups and having some meaningful discussions and then recommendations on those topics. And then the others had kind of more tangible, like look at this feature, look at this function, explore these ways of delivering services. So I wouldn't read too much into like what says discovery, what says not, you know, but it was just about how it broke down in the sense like what was including a little bit more fact finding and group discussion versus what had some more tangible, just look at these specific things to do.
And then they can read the proposals.
Yeah.
On the website.
Yeah, all the proposals are online, so you can see all the detailed proposed as well. So with that, I want to make sure we steer in, so I'm gonna hand it to Deanna, facilitator extraordinaire.
Slide.
All right, so what we want to do is have a discussion, and this discussion is built off of some of the conversation that came out of the CIO listening sessions. Who went to a CIO listening session? Great, looks like quite a few in there. Yeah, thank you today. We came up with sort of 3 broad themes that came out of those CIO listening sessions that we think intersect with the work of IT Federation. We wanted to have a little bit deeper conversation about those themes. We're going to use your input from this conversation to help us continue to plan phase 2 and the visioning for what IT Federation actually looks like. So we really want to hear your honest feedback and opinions. We can handle it. But we also would like to have you think about what constructive feedback that you can give and really ideas that are actionable or moving us forward. So just keep that in mind as you're giving us your feedback.
Slide.
We'll just jump into the first set of questions. So the first theme was shared decision making. And one of the things that we heard in the CIO listening sessions is that people really wanted to be involved in the decision making process earlier. They don't want to just provide feedback after a decision feels like it's already been made. They want to have an active voice in the crafting of those decisions. So we wanted to have a conversation with you all about when you've had an experience where you have felt like you've had a voice in an IT decision, in a standard or a policy, and what really allowed you to feel that way, that you felt like you were actively engaged in the conversation. This is the time when you all talk.
Easy, okay. So when it's happened in the past, where I have felt like, oh, this was a really good way that it happened, it's the questions came to me from a supervisor or manager or director that I had a good working relationship already. I mean, as much as I know that my bosses have bosses, just hearing about something from a campus level, it doesn't have the same impact as when the person I directly report to is the one coming to me and asking me about stuff.
So what I'm hearing there is that the relationship matters, like who's providing the information or asking the questions, that matters. Got one over here.
This is more perhaps an observation than something that we necessarily have a lot of control over, but feeling I have, when I felt like there was good experience with this is when I had bandwidth to actually engage in that discussion and get a really good understanding of the tools and the options and things like that. And then I had the time to actually attend the meetings, to talk about it, to gain and relay experiences in that area. And it's just gonna be really tricky with, just prioritization and all the different demands we have on our time.
Yeah, so do you have any ideas of what could be done to help you have that bandwidth or to help everyone have that kind of bandwidth for important decisions?
I think inevitably there's going to be some like tooling decisions that individuals are more invested in than others. And I think this would likely be management, even if that culture already exists, you manage and just like explicitly stating, take some time to evaluate this. I know you have an interest in this. I know this is a place where it's going to impact you in your work in the future. And it is worth that time to actually help shape the decision that's going to impact you and your peers in that area.
Thank you. Other comments?
So one of the things that I think the work group did really good was to gather those proposals broadly. So everybody kind of had an opportunity to put in those suggestions, and that may have filtered down, up from the directors. I think a couple of things that would be, not saying that these aren't happening, but just kind of reinforcing things along the way is making sure that people have an opportunity to give feedback along the way and have transparency in that process. I think those are really important for people to know what's going on and that decisions aren't being made in the back room somewhere. And then as you filter down into that broader implementation process, you're getting more and more work groups, making sure that there's a transparency around who gets involved in those and maybe kind of an openness to involve more people that aren't just at that leadership layer.
Thanks. And as far as I know, we're not making any decisions in this interim phase. So you're not right now. Just for clarity.
Yeah, we've got one in the tablet. So we put a tablet link in for in Zoom for virtual attendees. And so one person had said if people making the decisions are actively asking for feedback from people who would be affected. And another responder had said, I like being asked about use cases and exceptions for procedures, policies, and products.
Yeah, those are great pieces of feedback. Use cases and exceptions. I think we heard about that in the keynote this morning where we deal with exceptions all the time. It's always those edge cases that make things hard. Mm-hmm.
I guess when I've had, a policy or a tool come and it seems like it's really clearly driven by like a peer as opposed to a supervisor, like a peer coming and saying, oh, I've actually tried this stack of, of tech before and this is how I know it works. So kind of when I can see that the people who are gonna actually have to be using it day to day have experience with it and are, supporting it.
Great. Yeah, so some actual real world on the ground experience and advocacy. All right, we're gonna go to the next question in this theme. So this one is, if you could add one simple step to the university-wide IT decisions, to how university-wide IT decisions get made, what would it be and why?
Yeah, at the risk of losing my job. No, I've been on campus for not for 30 years, but having the freedom to do a pilot and show that it works and not just within your own unit, but across campus. That I think is over the years, that's what's really for me has allowed things to move forward. And also having the pilot coming from the ground up oftentimes. Top down, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, I would just take my facilitator hat off for just a moment and agreeing with you there that I think that in a federated model, having the ability to have things come from the ground up and not just the top down is going to be super important in understanding where is that throughout the campus for some service, for some product that we can then expand beyond the pilot testing.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that it is extremely important that not only do you have the people who are making the decisions in the room, but you also have the people that are going to be using it, the people who are going to be supporting it. Just the whole, you have to run the whole gamut. It can't just be like somebody making a decision, bringing in a tool, and then asking everybody to sort of shoehorn their workload into it. That decision has to be a group decision.
And how would you imagine that group decision getting made?
Well, through pilots. Yeah, through like you said, like through pilots and through everything that you have there, early testing, support teams, pilots, demos, usage examples, things like that.
Jason's gonna bring that microphone over there.
I guess I think it's important to have cross-campus representation on, whatever teams are assembled involved in those decision-making processes.
You mentioned ground up. So I guess supporting pilots from the ground up rather than looking for pilots from the top down.
We had a response from a virtual attendee, actually another one just came, we'll read both. One person said actually being able to assess the needs and use cases of all the different IT units before making decisions. And another person responded with early testing, including training if feasible. You won't be able to give input on software, for example, if you only touch it briefly.
All right, we'll go to the next. Oh, we got one more.
I'm gonna throw one in of my own. I'll moderate and ask a question. One thing that I'd like to see, we're already doing, but I'd like to see more of, is more reach out to stakeholders and subject matter experts across campus. I think a lot of time we do try to find people to say, you're gonna use this, what this is this like? But I think a lot of times it's a lot of the same people. And we've got a very large IT community here, and I'd like to see greater reach out to the further corners, people that aren't involved as often, but who are gonna be just as affected by this.
Great.
Slide.
All right, so we're gonna move to our second theme that we found, and that is bridging the knowledge gap. So I don't know how many times you have experienced where you've decided like, I've got this really great idea and I'm gonna try to work on it, and then you do a bunch of work and then you find out that somebody in a different school, college, or division already did it. And you've got a wheel and they've got a horse pulling a cart. And you're like, oh, I guess I didn't need to do all that. So in a federated model, it's gonna be really, really important that we figure out how do we share that knowledge across our various silos so that we're not having innovation happening in those silos that nobody is aware of, so that we can do that ground up work that we were talking about to identify what is right for a federated service. So as you're thinking about that, we'd like you to think of a time when you worked with another IT group across campus to resolve an issue or support a service like networking or identity or any of the other services. And what made that collaboration work really well? What made that possible?
It's from a previous life, but establishing a common vocabulary to talk about a problem was absolutely essential to a global effort I was once a part of. And we came to the table with different words to describe the same problem, and that inhibited our ability to move forward together.
Great, yeah, that's great. That one on the other side over there?
Having access to a common shared code base, so like Campus GitLab is extremely important for cross collaboration, especially when working with code. So having that and being able to share code examples or work on a problem together, proper Git and merge requests in place, it's been really beneficial for cross collaboration in our team.
Great, so that's a specific tool. Are there, can you think of other like outside of coding corollaries? So other, if we're working on policy, if we're working on purchasing, if we're working, any of those things, can you think of corollaries?
Yeah, I mean, having a common knowledge base, for example, so I won't list specific tools, but having a landing zone where we can collaboratively work on those policies together, is super important. And having the ability to search what other people are doing to the extent that they're willing, that's not like too sensitive information, really helps bridge that gap of, oh, somebody else has already figured this out. Let me ping them and see if we can collaborate on this or use some of their knowledge.
Great, thanks.
I think both positive and negative examples that I can think of in my past point to agreement at the management level of at the business level. when when the other divisions we collaborated with worked well, it's because somebody in the business level and our unit and one of their unit agreed, yeah, we understand the same problem. It'd be great if you guys work together and figure it out. And on the contrary, they was told to work, somebody has decided it's going to work with some division and is not agreement at the management level, even if it's just part of their management doesn't be a part of their other management. That's what's an IT collaboration.
So Alan, do you have ideas on how to foster that kind of outside of the IT world, business leader to business leader collaboration?
There's things that outside of people can do, but what we can do from inside IT is our classic skills of understanding the business analysis and business requirements can do. Then you speak the language and you can lead from below, lead from where you are. Convince them, say, hey, this is how you would benefit, because you know your own business leader's needs, context, right? What translate what maybe an IT sounding problem that they don't understand, and so how would benefit them.
Thanks.
For me, it was having a relationship with people rather than a ticketing queue. I know that a lot of things have to start there, but then actually having a person that I can talk on Teams with and we can collaborate and work through things as opposed to sending an email and waiting 2 days and then getting an email back and doing that. Like actually having the experts in the room virtually to work on things as opposed to just bouncing stuff back and forth through cyberspace. That's been huge for me.
I have a similar thought that shared relationships or already established relationships have often helped with collaboration. But one thought I had on that is if you don't already have that established relationship, it can be challenging to build or form a set of relationships. That is, if you already have, I should say the other thing might be a shared goal. So if you already have a shared goal or a shared space that you need to support technology in, it can be very easy to find someone to collaborate with. So I was thinking that there are cases where I think like, oh, I have an issue in this area. I would love to have someone with more expertise to collaborate with. And I realize there's another question coming up on that. So I will, thank you.
All right, we've got a couple from our friends in Zoom. One person said, I think people's willingness to help and share, friendliness and open-mindedness helped a lot. An agreed to forum / point of communication and collaboration for all possible collaborators to access and search for similar projects or collaborators. And another person said, understanding the expectations of the other team. For example, if the collaboration relationship is where you escalate cases, knowing and having a well-documented expectation form that team makes it, expectation from that team makes it easy for everyone involved, especially for the end user. So to recap, knowing and having a well-documented expectation from that team makes the collaboration a lot better.
Excellent. Want to move to the next question? Yeah. All right. So every IT role has invisible challenges, things that take a lot of effort, but others might not see. We'd like to hear a little bit about what one behind the scenes aspect of your work is that you wish your colleagues across Madison campus understood better. This is one of those options for this is an opportunity for developing some relationships because you tell about your behind the scenes thing and maybe somebody else is like, oh, I do that too.
I think that oftentimes we presume that because we work in a common organization, that everybody's problems are the same, and trying to figure out ways to develop a deeper understanding of the business drivers, or to use the word here, business drivers in individual units, which are very distinct. And the things that are valued and important to different business units are usually pretty varied.
developing that understanding and sort of common tongue about that would be really helpful.
Thank you. This side of the room has been kind of quiet. Can we poke on this side of the room?
I guess one thing I would add is the effort maybe that isn't seen is the human effort sometimes. Like a lot of things that seem like they're policy driven, they actually take a lot of behind the scenes, like follow up, question asking, communicating. So that might be something sort of relevant to when someone requests a particular type of account. And they're just that there are some automated parts of processes, but again, so many things are involved in just sort of provisioning an account.
Yeah, so often the devil is in the details and you don't necessarily get that, so you start asking questions and having those conversations.
I'd say that this isn't necessarily a visible challenge because I think it's pretty well known across multiple different industries, even higher ed as well, especially or just any kind of service, is that there's just the manpower limitation when it comes to taking on additional work. And seems like at least in the current era that's being filled in with AI is the solution that people feel can kind of cover that up. But that doesn't eliminate the things that require physical or things where people have to go and do things in different rooms or areas, and taking on additional things that will make the institution look good is something that obviously we are trying to strive for, something that makes us put stuff in the magazine. But one thing that a lot of people do not factor in is the man hours that need to maintain it in the back end, which does not get featured in the magazines or looks as good, but it's still needed to support that.
Thank you. Is there anything online?
Yeah, thanks. We've got a couple. So Victor had shared that name differentiation is one that he wishes more people knew about. What's in a name, for example, Oracle database hosting is Exadata. Sometimes naming alignment can be more challenging. Another person said a lot of the work that they do is research. I don't necessarily have the answers to troubleshoot things immediately, so information gathering is a very important part of getting things back online. And a third said, this is on behalf of someone else that they've really come to appreciate. It is darn difficult to maintain a working relationship with some of our vendors.
Slide.
Not wrong. All right, so we're gonna move on to the third and final theme. And that is about building a connected IT community. What we heard was that you all want more opportunities to interact with each other, to interact outside your school, college division, interact with different folks from central IT. This is an opportunity for that. But we want to hear a little bit more about times when that's gone well for you. So we want to think about a time that you learned a new skill or solved a tricky technical problem by reaching out to someone outside your immediate team. And how did you find that person? And what made the interaction either easy or difficult?
Working in departmental IT myself, it was central IT, to do it and asking Do-It, hey, I'm having a problem with, software stack XYZ. Do you guys know anyone on campus who has already done this before? And oftentimes, working with Do-It, they'll say, oh yeah, we know some other department has run into this, and so we'll connect you to names A, B, and C. So that was great.
I had a really lovely experience with someone from LMS helping me set up AV classroom. I'd never set up AV in a classroom before. And I encountered them, because of, actually our vendor for, AV, he came over and took a look at our setup and said, oh, you know, other folks on campus are using this particular tool, maybe you'd like to use this tool. And he said, you know, the folks in LMS are using this, so I looked up all the folks in LMS and I just reached out to the person whose name had AV under it. It was Brett Block, he was really lovely, really kind. He said they had recently set up the new tools, called the Wolf Vision Media Synapse, if other folks are aware of that. And I realized, and this is why I mentioned earlier, that it can be hard to find collaborations because they had just finished their setup. And so it was helpful that I got to learn a little bit about some of the gotchas they ran into. But I also realized that it would have been nice to be with them in the early stages. So I realized that was a missed opportunity in a way. But also, you know, it was also lovely to be able to learn from Brad some of the things that their team has been doing in the short time since they have had this tool set up in their spaces.
Yeah, I found that vendors are really great bridge builders because of course they want to sell you their stuff. And so if it's already sold it to somebody, they will connect you to their other happy customers. Happy to do that. Maybe not the unhappy customers, yes. Other comments?
Just another, filling the gap with a small reminder of things we've been give us a part in our leadership program, which is relationships. How, and if I think about how I would inspect our students, because I haven't been that person, some of my projects. Most of you are attending conference today, doing the right thing, talk to people, get to know people.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great opportunity for you. Don't waste it to learn some new faces and names. All right, want to move on to the last one? All right, so think of an IT service offered outside of your department that helps you do your job today. What about it works really well? I would also say that we could also entertain conversations about constructive feedback about a service.
The data center team and their hosting services. It's a great low-level offering. It allowed us to get out of the job of managing physical hardware, electrical, cooling, all that fun stuff, and focus on the services our researchers need. They just do a great job, and it's low level enough that it's super expandable across all the different units in campus.
I will say that I think that when the enterprise services work group talked about the data center one, that is one of the advantages talked about, that it in the federated model, it provides that core and that still allows the schools, colleges, and divisions to take it further. You want to jump in? Do you have one?
Part of my job is helping people find resources. So any group that has a good website or web pages that is really like instructive of, you know, just some basics, just well-designed websites. So I think the design lab is pretty good. And also I can't even remember what it's called, the student software, something. They have some good pages that when people are like, oh, I just want to use this kind of thing, I can kind of direct them to like a really like user-friendly like overview of different types of software that they can use. And that really like saves me time where I would otherwise just be like writing something up myself, some sort of guide. So, it sounds basic, but just like a good website that some of our colleagues have put together has been really helpful.
Sometimes the basic things are the most important things. Good communication.
We started using this during COVID, but
Beyond Trust or Bondar or whatever it's called, was super helpful for us for remote support. That's not something that I think Chris ran it first, maybe at first, and then do it took it over, but it's been awesome for us. And also second, the data center team. Great.
The KDT, having us, as we're combining and things are changing in our colleges and everything, having some place to put all of our knowledge in a place that we can search, and the fact that they're willing to come and help train and work with us has been great. Jason.
I'd like to give a shout out to the Center for User Experience for all the digital accessibility we're doing. You've got really good documentation online, robust conversation in teams where you can directly interact with the people that are experts on things. And digital accessibility is coming for us all, even though the federal mandate gave us an extra year. So their guidance to keep us on the same path going forward for how we do things, it's been very helpful.
This person said, if an IT service is working well, it means you probably don't have to interact often with the people who are running it. The response time when you do have a problem is another good metric for how well you think it works.
I have another one. Great, and Nick, it's been great. When you guys do it communications, when things go wrong and you guys are communicating out, that's really helps with our job. To know what's going on when it's bigger than just, oh, this isn't just me.
We've had some really good experiences with that research infrastructure folks. Offered like great solutions to some of the problems that we face. And especially with collaboration with outside third parties, you know, and we really appreciate it. So.
Thanks. What? Great. Wrap up? Yep. All right. So I'm gonna hand the mic back over to Jamie for some wrap up.
I was struggling thinking about one service, but I'll just say, thinking about particular services that I find super useful, WhiskWeb, I think that's wonderful. We within the school, we are continuing to run our own WordPress environment, and that's work. So groups like WhiskWeb, where you can move that sort of your web environment there, super helpful. But I'll also mention a non-do-it service, CHDC. I just feel like what's so wonderful about services like CHDC, and to be quite honest, like what makes this campus wonderful is people's willingness to talk to you. When you have a question, when you can't even define your question, it's like, hey, who can help me in this area? I never feel belittled or that my question is bad. I mean, I really am impressed when I ask really probably stupid questions, right? But people are always willing to pitch in. So I just say, like, on a macro level, if you're not in the practice of reaching out, I think that's the one thing that makes, will make Federation work on campus so well, is like, just reach out. People that you meet, people that might be able to help you, even if they don't have the answer, more than likely they'll say, you might want to talk to so-and-so. And I think that's one of the things that makes this campus community truly special.
Awesome, Pete. That was a good close on that. So thank you all for coming today, for offering your thoughts. I think we are gonna make the Padlet. Yeah, so we'll figure out a way to make the Padlet available as a follow-up if you have thoughts, but in the meantime, the program has on the website, there's a way to reach out. So you can reach out through email, feel free to reach out to me directly, Teams, email, catch me in the hallway here, whatever it is. We want to continue having these conversations and hopefully as you take away from this is one of many opportunities to engage that we're going to be building into the future. And so thank you for helping us continue to build this new way of talking about our federated IT operating model, technology operating. Thank you all. Now you get to be free to lunch. And can we do an extra round of applause for Deanna for facilitating?